I met a man who changed my life. I met many men who changed my life. And I think that's one of the things that you should consider while you're alive. You know, you need a teacher, you need a mentor. And that's not a YouTube video. It's truly not even a book, right? It's a person, a living, breathing individual. I'll give you an example. Let's say Jesus was alive right now. How much need would there be for the Bible? It came after him, right? It came after him. And when the Buddha was alive, he wrote no books. All the books came after him. In fact, 500 years after him. So if 500 years from now, somebody tries to say what I said, it's going to be contorted. Okay? And you need a real living person to teach you. And right now, there aren't too many teachers around worth listening to. I'm still looking. I still look for teachers. And I have teachers that are alive, and I have one that's dead, two that's dead now. But my living teachers, they're still around. And when you read the book, The 48 Laws of Power, the first law is never outshine the master. And Robert Greene, in his tiny little world of power, how could that guy talk about power? You ever seen a grasshopper write a book on power? Right? The grasshopper goes and sits where the lions are and takes notes and says, one day the lion walked. Right? And then the grasshopper goes where there's a gorilla and it's like, and one day the gorilla pounded its chest. Oh, gorilla, I wanted to talk to you. And so that's a grasshopper that writes, okay? But the first law is never outshine the master. And he speaks from a position of a grasshopper, a weak individual. It looks like a little insect. And so his speech and whatever he writes will always be from a perspective of a weak individual trying to understand power. And power is not something a weak individual could ever have. It's something you sit in, okay? And when you read that book, as the world has, and I haven't finished that book, I finished his two other books. But when you read that book, it's always going to be written from the perspective of weakness, okay? And so the first law is never outshine the master. I agree, but not from his perspective. His perspective is so that one day you don't get beat up. So don't outshine the master. That's where he writes from. That if you outshine the master, and he gives you records of people in history who outshined the emperor and this and that, and they got their ass kicked. Okay? I could give a flying fuck about that. Who gives a shit? But I personally won't outshine my masters. And I'll tell you exactly why. Okay? Because no matter how much I know, they still have so much more to offer me. I haven't begun to even understand what they know. You get it? Like my jiu-jitsu master, Batata, the current world champion, right? Doesn't matter how much I know. He is an embodiment of jiu-jitsu, okay? Mystery, the person who taught me social dynamics, he's still alive. No matter how much I know, no matter how good I get, I haven't even begun to tap what he knows. He's only shared just probably his pinky toe with me, right? How many conversations have I had with him? How many times has he actually sat me down and said, this is how? Or I had the privilege, right? If you read the book, The Mystery Method of the Game, that's based on him. I've had the privilege of him telling me the 7-hour rule that I wrote in this book was written for this. It was on a bench outside Sheraton Hotel in LA. So I know more. And again, it was only like maybe a 20-minute conversation, right? But can you imagine if he took me out and I was a student and I was humble and I was like, it doesn't matter how good I am, right? That's not why I'm sitting in front of you for, teacher. I'm sitting in front of you to find out the wisdom you have, because one day they're going to read about you and it's going to be a Jesus and a Muhammad and all that. And no one's going to know, but you're alive. So let me understand everything I can. So those are two of my teachers that are still alive. And so I don't want to outshine the master, not because they're going to beat me up or that Batata could beat me up. Mystery could probably do better pickup than me. But I don't want to outshine the master because the master is a treasure, still waiting to be explored. So much more to learn from him. God, can you imagine if I could move a timeline over where this world would keep going exactly as it is? I would go and live with one of these guys day and night. I'd flush their toilet for them like I did earlier here. I'd make their tea for them. I would sit at their feet. If they napped, I would take a nap right next to them. If they said I'm going to take a walk, I would walk way behind them unless they asked me to walk next to them. And I would just watch. And if I had one chance and they said, here, listen to this, I'd be all ears. And then if he said, do you have a question? I wouldn't be like, well, no, let me think about it. I would say I have so many questions. I'll start with one. And then I would ask, right? And the reason why I don't outshine the master is because the master is the master. And to outshine the master would be the stupidest thing anybody could even think about. To even have to write it in a book tells me how weak he must be. Naturally, I don't want to outshine the master. Right? The master hasn't even begun to teach me, no matter what. You know, you see me here in present time with abilities and qualities that are admired in the world, and that's why you're watching. And everywhere I go, people watch. Because I've achieved mastery of my own art. And these men who taught me, who are still alive, the idea of outshining them is as stupid as a candle trying to outshine the sun. The fire from here comes from there, right? The source of my jiu-jitsu is Half Gracie and Batata. That's where I took the light from them as much as I could, right? I was Batata's #1 student, his first black belt. I was and still am Mystery's #1 student. Because unlike his other students, I never tried to outshine him. And a few times I've made the mistake of speaking as if I would, but now that I understand a lot more, I understand during those times what was happening. I wasn't fully present, right? And so when you read these books, right, none of the books can teach you, and all of them are going to confuse you. I would stop reading if I were you. Eve knew that, or Adam knew that, to not eat from the apple of knowledge because they weren't prepared for it yet. So if you want to learn, let's say, whatever, right, it's better that you empty your cup first. And that's an old martial arts storyline. The samurai went to the master and said, will you teach me? That wasn't the samurai, it was a scholar, different story. The scholar went to the master and said, will you teach me? The master looked at him and said, sure, sit down if you want to learn. Let's have some tea first. And the master poured himself some tea, slowly, in present time, every motion present. And then he began to pour for the samurai, or the scholar. And as the tea filled up, he kept pouring. And the scholar kept watching as this thing kept pouring out, pouring out, pouring out. And somebody's like, hey, what are you doing? And he kept pouring and pouring and pouring. And he said, it's already full, can't you see? And the master looked at the scholar and said, just like this cup, you're filled with information, you're filled with knowledge, and you're going to have to empty your cup before I could teach you. Right? If you're here, I hope you're here to learn. Now, you may not even know that I have anything to teach you because you've never had a teacher. How many of you have had a bona fide teacher? How many of you have had a bona fide, real life teacher? Somebody worth listening to. Because in their own life, they displayed mastery of a certain subject. So now, with mixed martial arts, shout out to UFC last night. A person studies all kinds of martial arts so they could go beat somebody up so they could make some money, right? But none of them, well, that's not true. Some of them are true martial artists, and I can see it. But the spirit of the martial arts is lost because the way you learn martial arts is you learn from a master of the martial arts. And that master normally is not really giving a shit about status or money. Doesn't mean he doesn't have it. He just doesn't give a shit about it. He's been overtaken by the spirit of the art. He has a relationship with the ideas, philosophies, and the actual living spirit of this thing that goes through all the ages that they try to kill. So the first thing that a man must do to learn my art is to get familiar with the spirit of man. Do you know what it means to be a man? Can you define it? Did your mom teach you how to be a man? That goes far. Was it your stepdad? What is that? What is that? You ever see a lion adopt a cub from another lion? How about a gorilla? Bear? Crocodile? You're a hunter. You're a hunter, right? Did you eat meat today? You hunted. If you ate meat, you hunted. And if you say, I'm not, okay, then you and I are not the same. There's a place for the vegetable-eating animals, and they don't, sometimes they do, but they don't have the same language. I'm not a vegan. I'm not a vegetarian. I'm not gay. Doesn't mean those guys are gay. So you're a hunter. If you're a man, you're a hunter. The spirit of the hunter is in you. Another word for a hunter is a predator. A predator, not a child predator. I would never even use those words together. A predator is one of the most beautiful words I've ever seen in my entire life. It is so powerful that if you walk up to any man who still has one semen left in his balls and you start speaking of a predator, he comes to life. And that's what they want killed in you. So first you have to become familiar with the spirit of man, the soul of him, because that's who you are. And what if you're a woman? First, you have to become familiar with the spirit of a woman. Now, who taught you? Your mother? She failed. She failed. Right? How do you know? Look at your dad. The way you know your mother failed is look at your dad. She demasculated him. Right? She took his balls. So your mother has no idea that God made her not to do that, right? If she had sex more than one man, she failed as a woman. Unless that man died. If that man died, it's understandable to some degree. Because the spirit of the woman is not the spirit of the prostitute. Just like a man must overcome his fears, insecurities, anxiousness, and all that other shit, he must work on himself as he grows up to act like a man at a time when everybody else doesn't. If there's a fire, he runs into it to save his family. If there's a threat, he faces it. But he has to overcome a lot of things to do that. And a woman also has to overcome her promiscuity, her materialism, and her narcissism. And women love to call men narcissists, but it's actually a female word. The actual word itself is feminine. Everything is masculine and feminine. I'll give you an example. The moon is feminine. The moon itself is female. The sun is male. Saturn is male. Earth is female. So everything is male and female. Everything is male and female, right? So the word narcissist and narcissism is another word for female. It's another way of defining the female, actually. So a woman must first become familiar with her own soul. Now, I'm not a woman, so I'm not going to teach a woman how to be a woman, but I don't need to because I'm a man. So I don't need to teach her. I would just lead her. Lead her out of her hell that she's in. It was her great-grandma that ate the apple. It was my great-grandpa that allowed it. And so one thing my teacher told me, Manu Tupo, he said, you must overcome the curse of your ancestors. And I have. So when you read these bad books, if you want to learn how to surrender, you don't read Michael Singer, The Surrender Experiment, because I spent 5 years of my life dedicated to learning it. And all it did is made me weaker. It made the women around me weaker because I became weaker. It made my business worse because I became weaker. Because all I have to do is look at Michael Singer and realize that that may be a Brontosaurus Rex, but not a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Right? That may be a Triceratops, but not a raptor. It may be a turkey, but not an eagle. And an eagle should never study what a turkey does. Study it just to hunt, but not to be. And if you read Eckhart Tolle, that's not how you come to present time, and that's why you haven't been able to do it. And you know that because Oprah is evil, and she loves Eckhart Tolle. Right? And so these books are destroying you. They're confusing you. The knowledge is killing you. You've been filled with knowledge and you can't even see anymore because the words jump in front of the experience. Right? You don't smell the rose anymore. You go, oh yeah, I've seen those roses before. Someone says, my God, look at the moon. You go, I know. You don't look. You don't look at the moon. You go, I know. Someone says, I was at the beach and it was so beautiful. You say, I know. One time I was at the beach. What is going on? So it prevents you from listening. And if you can't listen, you can't hear. And if you can't hear, you can't know how to respond. Imagine an animal in the jungle who can't hear. It's toast. And so more and more and more ways of distracting and manipulating you. I use Instagram. I use Instagram. I use TikTok. I use YouTube. I use Netflix. You're being used by those things. You get worse when you look at it. I get better when I look at it. Because I know my essence and my nature and my path. Now, if you ask any human being, what's your purpose in life? Very few will give you their purpose in life. But how can you know your purpose if you're not even listening to God anytime? But if you ask any child, 3 to 4 years old, who could communicate, what's your purpose in this life? They'll tell you. If they haven't been on TikTok at 4 years old, they might say something like, I want to be a firefighter, an astronaut, a police officer. That's a boy. I'm giving you boys. I want to be a firefighter, a police officer, an astronaut, a soldier. A little boy will give you where his contribution to society is about to be as a man. He'll never say, I want to make a lot of money. I want to be famous. I want to be a rapper. Rapping, singing is an expression of the soul. If that person has to write my music for me, I'm not a musician. I'm not a singer. I'm a parrot. Because the song has to come from me, not from him. He wrote it, he can sing it, but he doesn't have a good voice. What's your point? Then he shouldn't sing. Now, all things can be done because of one gift the Creator gave us that didn't give any other creature on earth that I see. We have a choice. Even though it may be limited, we're still conscious of a choice. Tiny little spark of choice. Right? So, I'm here to tell you that all the yoga classes you took destroyed you unless you studied with a yogi. And you studied as a student, a real student. Now, the word student is a Western word. It's not called a student in the tradition of learning. It's called a disciple, an initiate. Because then that tells you the disciple, the disciplined individual, or an initiate, one who's been given the secrets of something further than others. I teach in the tradition of disciples and initiates. And the world loves to try to invalidate me. But they can't, as you saw yesterday, how I handled a tiny, tiny little guy. So small. Because not one time I attacked him. Not one time did I attack him. But every time he tried to attack, he got hurt. Every time he tried to attack, he got hurt. Well, why don't you go shoot into the sun and see what happens? You want to be really fucking powerful as a human being? Go blow up the sun to show how powerful you are. Let's see what happens to Earth. The sun will be okay, but the Earth won't be okay. And you are supposed to embody nature. We're made of the stars. Are you a star seed? I am a star. Like Beyonce, that's not a star. That's the devil. That's the devil. You know it and I know it. To the left, all your stuff, to the left. In the closet, that's right? Taking pride that she has another man on call. Taking pride that she dances in her underwear on stage. And every woman I talk to, there's a girl we know here in Vegas, and we all vote her as one of the most beautiful women we've ever seen in our life. She's one of my friends, okay? And it's amazing to hear the false mentality and the false goals and dreams that she's been brainwashed into. But at the same time, somebody would have to ask why somebody who could probably make $1,000 an hour over there would sit down with me and have chicken instead and get $200 of my money. So $200, bro, give me a break. Okay, you have to understand what I'm talking about, right? That's like going to Bill Gates and getting mentorship from him for $100, like in ratio of like what capabilities are there. And there's a reason why she would sit there and talk to me and want to keep talking to me, because she knows the truth. So do you. That's why you keep showing up. So that's the lecture, design, destination, and movement. I have a technology that changes everything. It's an internal technology. I'm the first example because I saved my own life. I saved my own life. I'm not subject to anything that you are at all. Anything physical, illness, death, old age, stop at the red light, right? Of course. But you're not living on the outside, are you? You're living on the inside, aren't you? You're living with your own judgments every night, aren't you? So am I. And inside, I'm completely free. I used to read Diogenes, the philosopher, and think, man, I really want to be like him. Diogenes would like to be like me. The Diogenes couldn't have a relationship with a woman, but I can. I used to read Alexander the Great and think, I'd like to be that powerful. Alexander the Great would want to be me if he met me right now. Because I don't need to conquer with swords, I can conquer with words. I used to read Socrates and say, there's a man of wisdom that I want to be like. Socrates should study me because I would never, ever, ever drink poison on purpose if my wife was there and child. I have a responsibility to my wife and my child and my students. And any man I ever studied would do well studying me. Every one of them. And I know it. And that gives me a tremendous amount of confidence. And I can only get stronger by being challenged. Because that's how we get stronger. And I'm willing to change. More than anything, I'm willing to change. And more than anything, I want to change. I don't want to remain the same because everywhere I look, nothing remains the same. So I don't want to hold on to my successes. I don't want yesterday to be the best day of my life. Today will be the best day of my life. I will greet this day with love in my heart. Not love the way they say it. Love in a sense that I understand my connection to everything. Everything. And I know my part in it. Don't ever think the lion is disconnected from the gazelle. He knows he's connected to the gazelle. I was watching some stuff. I found this, I don't know if it was TikTok or Instagram. If you ask me the greatest crime I've ever seen on mankind, this is my opinion, and I know that it's not shared by a lot of people, and I say that because I can understand why. To me, mankind committing crime on mankind, to me, is not as violating as an animal committing crime on mankind. If you don't believe that, then I want you to think about a woman that was raped by her boyfriend or a date, and I want you to imagine a woman raped in the zoo by a monkey. And if you don't think it's happened, just search. Gorillas and chimpanzees have raped zookeepers. What's that? Dolphins have. How cute are they? That is the biggest violation. An animal violating a human makes my insides go crazy. So I found this TikTok or YouTube or whatever the fuck it was. And as I was going through it, in India or somewhere in India, there's these villages that animals they're right there. Like you see videos of lions, actual lions walking in the street sometimes, people videotaping them. Oh my God. And they attack people, jaguars and lions, all kinds of shit, man. I saw it all yesterday. And I never watched that shit, but I watched yesterday, right? And I was burning inside. And then I saw another violation. I saw the man-eater tiger that had killed 10 people get caught. And they had him on top of an elephant, 4 or 5 people, and they had him with some kind of stick right here and a noose, and it was like this. And there was people in the streets, and they were taking the man-eater And at that point, I felt about the human the way I feel about the tiger that ate the people. These two should not be interacting anymore. It's wrong both ways. And then I saw a jaguar. And it said the jaguar got arrested. It was the thing. And they had him by the cuff of the neck and legs and stuff. And I don't know how he was docile. Maybe they had tranquilized him. And his face, and I could feel him. He was aware. It would be like if you and I got caught by the baboons, chimpanzees, and they paraded us. And I have a problem with the soul being violated. Right? So a big fucking problem. And your soul is violated, but you're allowing it. You're allowing it. We're going to go into my next class. If you're a man, you should be there. All right? This is IMC Nation. Be the best and fuck the rest. See you guys.